cheese custards. Oh. It's not Easter. We're going Welsh. Well, sort of. Sort of Welsh. But probably not. And the beer I'm drinking is from Dorset, which is more near Wales than where I am at the minute. But I found this one. We are buying supplies for tonight. Come across this London Porter. No, I just all in Woodhouse. Dorset. Anyway, I digress. I said we're sort of going Welsh. That's nice. We're making Welsh Rarebit. Or you can say Welsh Rabbit, that is allowed. But we're going to make Welsh Rarebit. So this Welsh Rarebit is a very traditional recipe we're going to follow. Because I said to the wife, why don't I just do something simple? Why don't we just have beans on toast? And I'll do an episode about beans on toast. Be careful, almost did it, almost did the voice, which I'm not allowed to do the voice, I'm told off to do the voice. The wife said, oh, I don't like beans on toast. You know I don't like baked beans. So no. Why not have cheese on toast? Well, I thought cheese on toast. I know what I want to do. Welsh Rarebit. So, you're going to need some butter. I've got about 35 grams there. And I've got the same amount of flour, plain flour, 35 grams. I've got some Worcestershire sauce. We're going to use about 2 teaspoons of that. I've got some Dijon mustard. Now, some people say it should be English. Some people say it can be any bloody mustard you like. Some people say put powdered in. You know, like you buy an English powdered mustard. Some people use whole grain. We're using Dijon. So, we're going to put some Dijon in it, Worcestershire sauce. And then, of course, you need some beer. Now, I'm putting Guinness in it. I said to the wife, get some stout. And if I'd have gone, I'd probably ended up getting some of them porters and things like that. But she bought me 4 cans of Guinness. They only want about 150 mils. And then I said to her, get a nice cheese, nice strongish cheese. Something like strong cheddar, but it don't have to be cheddar. I said, if you want to be really exotic, we use like a blue cheese or something like that, but traditionally it should be something more like a cheddar. So she's bought Wensleydale. I said, we're not Yorkshire, we're Welsh. Or will be. And then you want an egg, and then I've got a nice sourdough loaf here, where it's one of them fake sourdoughs. I don't think it's a real sourdough, it's a supermarket sourdough. They sort of fake it, don't they? I noticed they like try and fake a nice ear on it. Anyway, and that's essentially it. Oh, and obviously 150ml of beer leaves a bit spare, doesn't it? I've already jumped the spare Guinness and an extra. Anyway, so what's that on there? You're going to just need a saucepan, and then you're going to need an oven. Now, my oven is preheating at the moment, you can probably hear it, 180. And I put a baking tray in there to get the baking tray hot. We are not going to toast the bread, we're going to do all that in the oven. So, let's get making a roux. So I put my heat on, and in my saucepan, I'm going to add that butter, that there. And we're going to melt that down. So like I said, we're making a roux. Once you've made a roux, it's a base for lots of different things. We're digressing here. But a roux is basically butter, you know, fat and flour. And then if you add a stock, it becomes velouté. If you add something like sort of spiced milk or something like that, it becomes bechamel. But we just make the roux. So what is Welsh Rarebit or Welsh Rabbit? Because it can be called that. I know some people go, no it can't, it's not, it's Welsh Rarebit. Don't get it wrong. Well, it can be either. Alright, that's so that's sort of, pardon me, we can't see that there. So we can go with that flour, and we're just going to whisk that through, and we want to cook it a bit because you want to sort of cook the flour out of it, if you like. Well, you're not going to cook the flour out of it, but you're trying to make it so it's less floury, if you like, in taste. I don't know why I'm using a whisk, because I'm going to switch to wooden spoon soon anyway. I'd probably been better off in the first place, but anyway. I'm using a rather large pan as well, but that's simply because it's a bit more stable. Anyway, so essentially a Welsh Rarebit is a hot cheese sauce, which this is what this is the basis of the sauce. Often with ale, beer, mustard, Worcestershire sauce. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Served on toasted bread. But even though it's called Welsh Rarebit, it's no idea actually where it came from. Chances of it actually being Welsh in origin is, well, I don't know, slim. But the first recorded, so I'm just giving this a minute or two on this lowish to medium heat. Just keep it stirring because it will burn if you're not careful. You don't want to burn. You don't want to burn root. So I said the first recorded, documented record of something called Welsh Rarebit was 1725. So it's been around quite a while. But like I say, whether it was actually Welsh, there is a connection to Wales in the fact that you get this Welsh Coles Pubby, my boy. Probably said that wrong. Coles Pubby, which is basically baked cheese. Now let's start to bubble a bit, and you can see after the flour all incorporated. I'm going to give that a little bit longer. Turn that heat down. Now, I said to you first documented, won't go quite way back. There is documents going back to 1500s with things to do with baked cheese. But like I say, that didn't call it Welsh Rarebit then. We're in our third heat wave at the minute. I meant to peak today, possibly tomorrow. It's not quite as hot as it was the second one, which was like 1 week ago. Anyway, I'll take that off of there in a minute, get a drink, and we'll move on to the next bit. So I've ended up getting about 200 mils of beer here. So we're going to add half of it straight in, and we're just going to mix that in. And obviously you want to get that nicely mixed in, no lumps. Which is more like at one point you might want to switch to that wooden spoon. So you need to get round there and all them edges. And this should start thickening up. You can see already it's starting to thicken. And so at which point you just start adding a little bit more beer. And we'll keep going till probably we've got all that beer in there and we've got a nice thick sauce. Now I'm telling you about the documented stuff. So there's a cookbook, The Art of Cookery by Hannah Glass, 1747, and she mentions two variations of the English rabbit, she calls it a rabbit, a Welsh rabbit and a Scottish rabbit. And they're sort of similar to your sort of classic Welsh Rarebit. So that's thickening quite quickly. I'm wondering if I might want to put a bit more beer in there, to be honest. I mean, we're trying to make quite a thick sauce, but remember we're going to be putting cheese in it. Now there are some variants. So for instance, you can put an egg on top when you've made it. We're putting an egg in it, but if you like, put an egg I don't know whether you poach it or whatever, but you put an egg on top. That's called a buck rabbit, or a golden buck. Oh, excuse me. If you blend it with tomato or tomato soup, it becomes a blushing bunny. We're not doing silly things like that. We're just making Welsh Rarebit. Did you know Welsh Rarebit has its own national, I mean, in England, it's bloody national day for everything. Well, I don't know if it's in England, I mean, everywhere. But there is a national day, Welsh Rarebit Day, 3rd of September. Every year, 3rd of September, Welsh Rarebit Day. So, that beer's all gone in there. I had poured that beer quite a little bit in advance. You'll find otherwise, where's my cloth from? Oh, buried. It will foam up, so just be careful of that. Foam up, it'll come back down again, but obviously if you're using a small pan, be careful, whoosh, over top. So, yeah, you've got its own national day. Right, so we're now ready to add our Worcestershire sauce and our mustard. I've just moved it off the heat a minute because I obviously didn't want it catching while we're doing this. Now, you want a nice generous teaspoon of mustard. I might as well just scrape everything that's in here out, so it's a bit more like 2. Who cares? You could add, like I say, whole grain, English, up to you. I've also done away with the whisk and I've got my spoon. Okay, there we go, that in there. And then we want, not been opened. Oh, an open one. Oh, look what open. Oh. Yes, I have. Buried in the back here. I knew I had one in here. Excuse me for being off camera for a bit. I've got a new one out. Wife went a bit mad with shopping. And she kept reordering the same thing. She kept out. I almost did the voice, no, I did the voice. Got told to do the voice. Tesco's keep like putting stuff back in your basket too. Oh, bugger it, I made it in 3. I like Worcestershire sauce. It is sort of semi-optional, not really. And now all I'm going to do is mix that through, heating it on. Hang on, so did I actually start saying, why Welsh Rarebit then? Well, actually it might be a bit of an insult. It might be a sort of colloquialism or whatever, for basically saying, you know, it's like, it's a rather vulgar dish, rather substandard, just like the Welsh. I'm not being, I'm just repeating what they said. Nothing against Wales. Been to Wales a few times. But the Welsh have in the past, well still do apparently, get a little bit of stick just simply for being Welsh. I think it's probably because they beat the English back in whenever, you know, in dark ages or whatever, you know, or when we tried to go over there they said, oh, made us. But anyway, it may be, like I say, just simply a bit of an insulting way. Betty Crocker, is it Crocker? In her cookbook, she claims that it's simply the fact that the Welsh peasants, you know, a bit like it was with sort of nobles and peasants in England and things like that, you know, if they caught rabbit, that was for the noble. Peasants couldn't eat rabbit, so instead they made a dish with cheese in, because cheese was quite common. Cheese was made everywhere. Hence the Welsh Rarebit was essentially, well, it's our version but no rabbit in it. Becky Crocker actually did go on to make another slight comment. Well, anyway, I decided to keep my final bottle of porter. I had to open the Guinness she bought 4 cans. I didn't, well, did I actually? But I'll have to use again. Now I've turned the heat off, and I'm just let that cool a little bit because we're going to be putting the egg in it soon. What we're going to do is now take our bread. Now, because we want quite nice sized bits, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut at a slant like that. Some decent sized thicknesses, if you like. Ooh, we've got a bloody hole in that, bloody hell. Actually, it's genuine sourdough, I don't know. A lot of sourdough you get from supermarkets is sort of like enhanced citric acid to make it sour. So we're just going to cut 4 slices. Bloody hell. Ooh, years ago. I might do, because there's such a big hole in that, I might cut another one there. So, that's my bread done. Now, it is sort of like normally toasted, but we're going to do it in the oven. So my baking sheet that I'm going to cook this on is in there already, getting nice and hot. I was wondering whether using baking stone, it's not big enough to do all this. I might have to eat that. So, let me just get that out of the way. So, this insult, if you like, about it being Welsh and vulgar, may just simply be, not actually really an insult, it might just simply be, you know, the Welsh at the time, or certain parts of Wales at the time, couldn't afford anything, so therefore they just had to have fixed with cheese on toast. But there is quite a little bit of a jokey thing about Welsh and baked cheese. Okay, I'll come to that in a minute. But just to give you an example, although, you know, we're saying Welsh Rarebit and it's got no rabbit in it, I'm going to have to take some of them things out of my knife block. I've got so many bloody knives in here, my knives can't fit in anymore. But you do get other sort of foods that are like, for instance, Rocky Mountain oysters. They're ball testicles. Okay, Irish apricots. That's a jocular name for potato. Or Welsh caviar. Oh, we'll have another go at the Welsh again now. And that's lava bread. Now, you can make a version of this using lava bread. That's with seaweed. But we couldn't get that in Tesco, so we just got sourdough. A bit doughy actually, that sourdough. See, they ain't cooked that right. Anyway, never mind, that's another story altogether. Okay, that's cooled a little bit. Now, the recipe calls for about 100 grams of grated cheese. This Wednesday though, it's pointless trying to grate that because it'll just literally crumble that up. We want to, and actually the pack was 200 grams, so I'm going to put that in. We're going to crumble in about 3/4 of it. Okay. Oh, I said to you about Betty Crocker, or Croker, or whatever her name is, and how she, right, that will do for now. And I'm going to keep that bit, we'll put that on at the end. Now, she alluded to the fact that this Welsh Rarebit was enjoyed by both Charles Dickens, and Ben Jonson of Ye Olde Cheshire Cheese Pub in London. She doesn't actually provide any evidence about that. I'm just stirring that in. It's not really melting at this point because it is quite cold. Well, not cold, but you know, it's not hot. And then we're just going to put 1 egg into it. Okay, so I'm just going to beat that in. Yeah, there's absolutely no evidence for this. And it's likely it's a complete myth, particularly because Ben Jonson died almost 100 years before there was any evidence that or documented evidence of a thing called Welsh Rarebit. So where she got it from or not, who knows. So at this point I'm just going to put the heat on slightly. Now the idea of the egg, I'll put it on low, is to help this set. Ooh. So I want to be careful I don't heat it too much in a minute, but this cheese needs to melt a bit. Probably Wednesday night, probably not the best cheese to use. Alright? Because at the minute, it's a bit like scrambled in there. So, we're getting close to doing this. Like I say, some people toast their bread, but when you then put it onto the grill or in the oven, it might end up burning your bread. So we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it all in the oven. Probably won't taste it very well, but apparently I'm sure it will, but who knows. Anyway, so her story about the oldie Cheshire cheese club is probably a load of bollocks. Apparently eating Welsh Rarebit gives you vivid dreams. I thought that was just the fact if you ate cheese before you went to bed. This is a 1902 book called The Welsh Rarebit Tales. It's about a fictional writing club who, as part of their evening meal, they have large portions of Welsh Rarebit to give them vivid dreams. I still haven't told you the bit about what the wife said yet, and I'll tell you that in a minute. So I'm just heating this through a little bit because it's not very thick at the minute and I've got to get that onto that bread. So I'm just going to try and get that cheese to melt a little bit. I'm almost tempted to put more cheese in there. I've got another block of cheese, but anyway, we'll see how we get on. Actually, I've got some grated cheddar. I could put some of that in, couldn't I? Now, I did find some mature cheddar, grated mature cheddar. I won't mention how date it was. So I added that to it. That's melted in. The Wednesday now ain't melting that well. To be honest, I'm half tempted just to put that all in there. So I don't know quite how it'll be put on top. Anyway, I was saying to you, I was putting all this together, lying there in bed this morning. Getting a bit personal now, aren't we? Sort of compiling me sort of recipe and things I was going to say and everything, and the wife starts tittering to herself, and she had discovered the Vicar of Dibley junk. Now, if you don't know what the Vicar of Dibley is, it was a sitcom, it's an English sitcom starring Dawn French, probably everybody's heard Dawn French, who plays a local vicar of a little sort of country village. And most episodes ended with her, well, I think every episode did, with her sitting in the vestry or whatever after sort of, the end of the day and the services, chatting with her verger, Alice, who was a little bit on the thick side. And Dawn French would always tell this joke, which Alice never quite got. Anyway, she's playing this joke, and it's about 3 Mother Superiors who've all sort of died about sort of the same time, and they've all arrived at heaven at the St Peter's Gate. So that's starting to thicken. That cheese, it's going to look lumpy, this, because that Wednesday ale ain't melting. And anyway, they arrive at the gate, and St Peter says, right, he said, before I can let you in, I have to ask you a little question. It's not too difficult. If you get it right, in you go. So they go, okay, so first Mother Superior goes up and he says, right, what was the name of the first woman? And Mother says, Eve. Well done, in you go. Get to the second one. He said, right, I've got to ask you this question. Yeah. Right. where did Eve live? Oh, Garden of Eden. Well done, in you go. So old St Peter at this point starting thinking, right, this is starting to sizzle a little bit, so I'm just going to turn that heat off. But I'm going to continue stirring it for a little bit, so I'm getting that cheese to melt. So he gets to the third one, he said, well actually I've probably made these a bit easy, so I'm going to ask you a more difficult one. He said, what was the first thing Eve said to Adam? She went, that's a hard one. He said, well done, in you go. Did you get it? Alice didn't. I should hope you did. Very naughty. Anyway, I said to her, it's funny you should put that joke on, because I've got a joke about St Peter in heaven. But anyway, let's start preparing our slices, and I'll tell you the joke in a minute. Oh, must pick that up, just take that out of the oven, so I almost pick that up then. Let me move that down there a bit when you see what I'm doing. Don't pick the fucking paper up. Anyway, what we're now going to do is we're just going to share this amongst the 4 slices. Okay. Now, oddly, well, I know I did put extra cheese in it, but the recipe I followed was for 3 slices, and I'm using 4. And I was a bit worried earlier. I thought, have I got anywhere near enough in here? But it looks like I've got plenty. So we're just going to spread it over the whole thingy. But you do want to sort of mound it up in the middle a little bit, if you like. Anyway, I was sort of telling you. And this is part of the reason, I like cheese on toast, put cheese on toast on it, obviously it melts and it just runs everywhere. The idea of the egg in it is that hopefully it doesn't. Now you can add chives, some people add capers at this stage, you know, sprinkle some capers on top. Some people add chopped up spring onions. You can add some chilli if you want an extra kick. But we're not. What's this taste like? Ooh, that's nice. Getting the mustard. That's nice. Anyway, so that oven's up at 180, and we're now just going to put that in there. That was all mixed up already for about 15 minutes, which gives me plenty of time to tell you the joke. Now, this is a joke written a long time ago. It's actually a book from 1526, a joke book, 100 Merry Tales. Ooh, this is nice. I feel like a big kid. Well, I'm a big bloody kid, isn't I? And in fact, William Shakespeare often, well, not referred to it, but used it. Some of the jokes in it. But there's one in it that alludes to the Welsh and baked cheese and St Peter. So I'm just going to put some water in there. So God, up in heaven, he's getting a little bit better. Which is a bit naughty of God, because God's meant to be God and he should be tolerant. But anyway, that aside, it's a joke. He's getting fed up with all these Welsh. Probably talking about, I don't know. But anyway, he said they're driving him mad. So he says to St Peter, look, you've got to do something about these Welshmen. They're driving me insane. So St Peter thought, oh, I know what we're doing. So he goes outside the gates of heaven and he shouts out in a loud voice, "Quads, Bobby! He's as much to say," I've suddenly gone Geordie, as much to say as roasted cheese. Poor Bobby. Cow Bobby, so Cow Bobby. Poppy. Cow Bobby. Oh, whatever. Well, at which point all the Welshmen thought, "Oh, bloody baked cheese!" and ran out. At which point, St. Peter doubles back inside, shuts the door and locks the Welshman out. And apparently, that's why there's no Welshman in heaven. There you go. So, 15 minutes, getting that baked, and then all we're going to need is obviously some plates and a knife and fork to serve it with. I've gone Yorkshire again. And I'm on Guinness. It's not that. Oh no, it was Wensleydale, wasn't it? This is a Wensleydale in that sauce, that's what set me off. So that's had 15 minutes, and I had a quick look at it starting to bubble and everything else, which is what you want. It is going everywhere, mind you, or that bit that leaked out did. So, let's just put that on there. You can see it's starting to brown on top, which is what we want to see. So, let's... This is being helpful. So let's just try and get that off of there. It's a bit soggy. It's not really browned underneath, which is what we were hoping. I'm just going to scrape that onto there. And then... Now, obviously you want to eat it hot from the oven, but you want to just let it cool a bit, because that's melted cheese, that's going to be looking hot. So I'm just going to serve up the remaining bit, and then we'll have a taste. So I think in hindsight it might have been better to have at least lightly toasted at least one side. The top bit where, you know, there's no cheese has, you know, caught the heat as it were and toasted. The bottom's still a little bit on the soggy side. So there's a bit of bread, get a bit of sauce on there. Let's give it a go. You do want to let that cool a little bit, I think. We're getting the tang of the cheese, tang of the Worcestershire sauce. Also the tang in this case of the Dijon mustard. If you use English mustard, you probably get a bit more, you know, a mustard hit, if you like. But if you want your baked cheese like the Welsh, he says, and I'm not trying to be racist, if you like cheese on toast, this is sort of cheese on toast next level. Ooh, something there. Welsh Rarebit, or Welsh Rabbit. Call it what that. But there you go. Nice supper time treat. Well, it is if you use Wensleydale in Yorkshire. Ooh. Right, I'm going now because I've got to eat this. This is